Welcome to Bible Signs of Times. This channel is about knowing and being updated of the events around the world about the signs before the soon second coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. May these videos help us discern the times. Shalom and God bless. This is another update of the end time events happening around the world. Please support this ministry by subscribing to this channel and hitting the like button and notification bell for more updated new videos.
Clashes broke out on Friday in Formosa, a border city in northern Argentina, following the imposition of new coronavirus lockdown restrictions. Police officers used tear gas and rubber bullets against the crowd, injuring dozens. Formosa is one of Argentina's poorest provinces and had already been hit hard by an economic recession before the arrival of the virus a year ago. Many protesters were informal vendors demanding to be allowed to work. Human rights groups have denounced what they say was indiscriminate use of force by the police, but authorities insisted the protesters were responsible for the violence. Similar scenes on the same day across the border in Paraguay's capital, Asunción, where thousands of angry demonstrators confronted police throughout the night. Protesters burned roadblocks around Congress demanding President Mario Abdo Benitez resigned.
Burning tires and blocking main roads across the country for a seventh consecutive day. These are Lebanon's protesters angered by the ruling class and what they describe as lack of action. The latest demonstration comes against the backdrop of a crash in the local currency, which has lost more than 80% of its value, sending pricing soaring. And that's not where it ends. Here's a snapshot of some of their grievances.
My salary is now worth $150 a month. What else can I say? I can't bring home food for my family at the end of the month.
We can't send money to our children abroad. They're suffering. They're blocking them from registering for university.
All of the problems in Lebanon are because of Hezbollah's weapons, the hunger, the money, the terrorism, the theft.
This crisis gripping the country continues to spiral out of control with no progress on the formation of a new cabinet. This as squabbling politicians fail to adopt a roadmap. The country has been leaderless since August last year when caretaker Prime Minister Hassan Diab's cabinet resigned on the back of the Beirut port explosion that devastated much of the city.
Senegal is on the verge of the apocalypse. That's the alarmed assessment of Alioune Badara Cissé, the national mediator, after 3 days of protests turned deadly. Demonstrators accused President Macky Sall of being behind one of the opposition leaders' arrest. The mediator has urged the president to speak out. Protests erupted on Wednesday when lawmaker Ousmane Sonko, one of the main opposition leaders, was taken to court on rape charges, which the opposition believes are politically motivated. When the same day Sonko was arrested for disturbing public order, violence broke out. The deadly clashes were the most violent seen in years in Senegal, known for its stability. The opposition has called for 3 days of mass, peaceful protests. The UN, the ECOWAS regional body, and 19 foreign embassies have voiced concern, calling for restraint and urging authorities to take measures so that people can protest peacefully. On top of protesting against Macky Sall, who the opposition accuses of planning to cling on to power, the crisis has resurfaced long-standing frustrations. Protesters have denounced inequalities in Senegal, where 40% of the population lives in poverty.
The campaign of intimidation reaches new levels in Yangon. Hundreds of young protesters were trapped after they were surrounded by police and Myanmar's military in the city's Sen Chau district. Threatening door-to-door searches, they fired guns and used stun grenades as they patrolled, warning that anyone hiding protesters would also be punished. It lasted all night. The protesters were finally able to leave in the early morning hours after the security forces pulled out. In a rare and risky nighttime gathering, protesters in Yangon broke curfew, went to the streets calling for the release of the others. There are reports at least 24 were arrested overnight. Unfazed by the heavy hand of the security forces, across the country protesters came out and faced the continued crackdown, just a few hours after the trapped protesters in Yangon were finally able to leave. Since the February 1st coup, an advocacy group estimates 1,800 people have been detained. Several lawyers have stationed themselves in front of Endtime prison, helping relatives of those arrested find out if they are inside and if they need a lawyer. They say they are dedicated to serving those who have been detained free of charge, but also getting information to the families. 1,086 citizens were sent back to Myanmar on February 23rd. It's unlikely they will return to Malaysia, but it will prevent more than 100 others from being deported. The next hearing is in 2 weeks. While it's clear Myanmar security forces plan to continue their crackdown, the protesters are also not backing down on the streets, coming out to continue putting pressure on the junta.
For weeks now, tensions continuing to rise between the United States and Israel and Iran. But Israel and the United States now teaming up in a show of force against the Ayatollahs in Tehran. Israeli F-15 fighter jets seen escorting 2 American B-52 bombers through Israeli airspace on Sunday. And this shows strength coming after multiple alleged Iran-linked attacks targeted at the U.S. and Israel across the world. Recent attacks including several missile strikes on American military bases in Iraq and an attack on an Israeli-owned ship in the Gulf of Oman. Though according to the United States military, the patrol flight was intended mostly just to deter future aggressions and to reassure American allies of the United States' military commitment to maintaining security in the region.
Iran's fingerprints again trace back to an attack against Israeli assets abroad. India has concluded that Tehran was behind an explosion outside the Israeli embassy in New Delhi 2 months ago. That's according to an Indian news outlet who also said a local Shiite cell planted the explosive device. The Hindustan Times cited unnamed officials in its report. The counter-terror agencies are clear that the blast was part of the asymmetric warfare campaign being carried out by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps against Israel. The blast was initially claimed by an unknown Shiite militia who also left a handwritten letter in English with a warning to the Israeli ambassador from India's Hezbollah. The Indian security assessment indicates the goal was to send a warning and not injure people so as not to create friction between Iran and India. Meanwhile, in Israel, on Sunday, the IDF sent a message of its own, publishing a video showing Israeli F-15 fighter jets escorting those American B-52 bombers, which have been used numerous times in the past several months as a sort of reminder of America's military capabilities and its strategic partnership with Israel.
Soldiers loyal to Yemen's UN-recognized President Abdrabbu Mansour Hadi are facing their biggest challenge in years, preventing Houthi fighters from taking control of Marib. The province east of the capital Sana'a is rich in oil and natural gas. It's also Hadi's last chance to regain control of Yemen. But the Houthis have been sending reinforcements. They know the Battle of Marib could decide the future of the country. Further south, fighting has intensified around the city of Taiz. Government forces have launched an offensive to retake military bases controlled by elite army units loyal to the Houthis. The Iran-backed rebels hold ground in Taiz to prevent government forces from advancing towards Marib in the north. Violence is spiraling out of control. While that's going on, the Houthis have launched an attack targeting oil facilities in Saudi Arabia.
The artillery and drone divisions were able to conduct a wide offensive in the depths of Saudi Arabia with 14 drones and 8 ballistic missiles. We targeted Aramco in Ras Al Tanura port and other military facilities in Dammam. More military sites were targeted in Asira and Jizan, and the strike was precise.
But Saudi Arabia says its air defenses intercepted the drone and missile attacks. Retaliation was swift. The Saudi coalition launched airstrikes in the capital Sana'a. The escalation comes as the US envoy to Yemen is visiting the region to rally support for an end to the conflict. Timothy Lenderking is hoping to bring all the parties and give diplomacy a chance. But the last breakthrough in Yemen was short-lived. In 2019, the UN convinced the warring factions to agree on a ceasefire, a prisoner swap, and political talks on the future of the country. Weeks later, the deal collapsed and fighting has not stopped ever since.